And once more, dear friends, we are going into the breach. Oh, you're Catholic? Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. You acted like an American, okay? Now, there's a number of different things that have to be done in this country to change the culture, which will in turn change the politics.
And the culture's a swamp. Because that is not a Catholic teaching.
Right.
And the cafeteria is closed, my friend.
Yeah. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, we are going into the breach. He tells the truth, just like we do at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on Sunday nights, 8 o'clock, Facebook Live. We got a great show for you tonight because, as we always say, the left is teeing it up for us, and we're Barry Bonds standing at home plate, ready to knock their lies right into San Francisco Bay.
Gotta wait for that. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo is always joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, let us go into the breach. Sunday night, 8 o'clock, Facebook Live. For most of you out there, you know that what Joe and I normally do is we survey the landscape over the last couple weeks. We come up with a bunch of stories that we think you might want us to dissect for you and give you our take on. Today, we're talking about one story, and one story only. And that is the fact that conservatives lose again, and we lost at the Supreme Court. Joe and I are going to break it all down, give you all the facts, and we're going to tell you the truth about what's going on. Remember to like this video, follow us on Facebook, follow us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube. Please share. This will be a recap of a conversation that we also did on the Crusade channel this past Monday, and crusadechannel.com. Remember, there's a 30-day free trial membership. Crusade Channel is awesome. That's all we have to say about that. crusadechannel.com. And please keep in mind, Joe and I do have a GoFundMe campaign going. You can see the link on the Frontline with Joe and Joe Facebook page, or you could just search Support the Frontline with Joe and Joe on GoFundMe and go kick in a few bucks. All right. Having said that, the Supreme Court, I mean, we're going to get into it, but the Supreme Court just really stuck a dagger in our back. And we expected it, given what we thought of John Roberts as the conservative, right? Back in, what was it, 2005? He became the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And then when Obamacare came around, John Roberts showed his true colors and what he's all about. Unfortunately now, because it's a Trump nominee, it's a Trump judge, Neil Gorsuch just followed suit. And he and John Roberts, they joined the liberals on the bench, and they betrayed us. And we're going to tell you exactly why. So let us start with, and then I'm going to kick it over to Joe Resinello. Please ask any questions you like in the com box. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, let us know, okay? So here's what it is. This comes from, we broke it down, and we're going to first go through what a number of people had to say about this decision.
Just let people know what the case is and what it's about.
Yeah.
Like, then we could talk like people. I guess the case is Bostock, Clayton County. What it did was it redefined the term sex in the 1964 Civil Rights Act to mean not simply male and female as biological facts, but also sexual orientation and gender identity.
Speaking of males, real quick, happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. I forgot about that. Happy Father's Day, Joe Resinello. So yeah, that's exactly what happened. So continue.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we always talk about science, right? Everyone wants to talk about science, science, science. Well, as per biology, there are two sexes, male and female. This particular case changed the scientific fact that there is a male and a female to include sexual orientation and sexual identity in the term sex. And it's going to have a trickle-down effect through many, many things in our society, and we're going to speak about them.
Yep. And Martin Berger, he was writing, it was either LifeSite or The Federalist, I'm not sure, but it was Martin Berger. So he kind of like broke this down. Now remember, the law was that they changed. They essentially changed the law. Okay, that's what Gorsuch did, and that's
Correct.
what Roberts did. They changed the law. But we as Americans, even though they think we're all stupid, we as Americans know that it's not the job of the Supreme Court to change law. It's for them to interpret law. It's for the Congress to change law. And if they do, there could be political accountability to the people that voted for them. Okay? They have to go back and they have to explain their vote. The Supreme Court just, and we're going to get into it more, disenfranchised us. Now, Josh Hammer wrote this in First Liberty. Okay? Quote, Bostock is no joke. And it lays bare the moral and intellectual bankruptcy of the conservative legal movement, which we thought was a great thing, right? The conservative legal movement, which means the anti-judicial activist wing, okay, of our Supreme Court, which has been there for decades now. Your Elena Kagan's, your Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We thought the conservative legal movement was going to be such that, no, we don't make law, we interpret it. If the law needs to be changed, we declare it unconstitutional, we send it back to Congress.
That's the way the system was set up.
We both took civics in the 6th grade. So we know how the system is supposed to work. So Hammer continues, he then demanded, quote, a more forceful conservative legal movement just as willing as the left to make moral arguments in court based on principles of justice, natural law, the common good, and the religious and moral traditions underlying Anglo-American constitutional order. Ooh, is that a bad word? Can't say that. And the problem is I'm not joking. Neither is Joe. It's a bad word. Conservatives lack backbone. They don't have any backbone. They cave into everything. The left can do whatever it wants. They could declare a baby could be killed after they're born and nobody cares. They never apologize for it. They don't care. But conservatives, all of a sudden, they're afraid. They're afraid to be positive in what they believe and put that forth. And what they do is they cave. And they caved in this. And it's disgusting.
And the key, again, what Joe was saying, is the court is not made to make the law. It's made to interpret the law. And a lot of times those on the opposite side of this argument always talk science, science, science. Science says that there are 2 genders, male and female. Sexual orientation and gender identity, when this law was created in 1964, had nothing to do with the term sex.
Right.
You're interpreting a statute incorrectly. You're broadening a term based upon the times. That, my friend, is a dictatorship of relativism. That is what we just saw. And that is the type of activism that cannot be on the bench. That's why we want constitutionalists, people who believe in the Constitution. Listen, if you don't believe in the Constitution, you don't believe in America.
Right.
I believe in America, and I believe in the Constitution as it was written. It's not there for judges to interpret law based upon the mass screams of society as they currently are. Remember, the Supreme Court deemed slaves, what was it, 2/5, 3/5?
2/3 a person?
2/3 a person. The Supreme Court, we all know that wasn't incorrect. That was incorrect, right? I think everyone would agree upon that.
Right.
And they just basically broadened the term sex to mean something much more than just male and female based upon someone's interpretation of who they think they are. Sadly, it's a psychological issue. Johns Hopkins will back me up on that. That's not my opinion. That's Johns Hopkins' opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we're getting from the bench.
Right.
And again, we're going to talk about this through legal scholars in this presentation. It's going to have a trickle-down effect throughout our society. Girls' sports, religious expression. It's going to have endless lawsuits as a result of this because they lack the backbone. Eventually, it's going to end right back up in the Supreme Court, and we'll see how they view it.
Well, we have to see. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out as you're at the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, Sean, Orly, Roseanne, Connie's joining us. And please, like I said, like and share this video with your friends, and follow us over on YouTube at the front line with Joe and Joe. So this was Josh Hammer writing about Gorsuch's opinion. I'm focusing on Gorsuch because, like I said, we already knew we had a Judas in John Roberts. Okay, and there's some development since last week that we're going to throw in because Tennessee just passed a very restrictive abortion law. We'll see if John Roberts, Mr. Conservative, okay, is going to uphold that law. Okay, and it's a heartbeat bill basically, but it bans all abortion once the heartbeat is detected. And the legislature passed it, and the governor's ready to sign it. That was in the news this week. So we already knew John Roberts was a Judas, and Gorsuch. This is my problem with Gorsuch. Let me read what Hammer says. He says, "Quote: This is him writing on Gorsuch's opinion. It's ivory tower liberalism. Ooh, do you think that's a shock? Ivory tower liberalism." And it's, excuse me, Joe, and it's completely at odds with the Supreme Court's long-standing dictum that Congress, in drafting statutes, won't inscribe a hidden meaning in otherwise plain language. As Justice Samuel Alito sharply noted in his dissent, sex in 1964 meant biological sex, man and woman, not orientation, and certainly not subjective gender identity. Gorsuch just decided to say, I got my finger on the pulse of the culture. This is what the American people want. I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to give it to him. And it's not his job.
And that's the bottom line. Like, activism from the court is not supposed to take place. Sorry, guys. It's not supposed to take place. Laws are made in the Congress.
That's right.
Not in the court.
And the faster we get that through our heads, the better off we'll be. Now, Gorsuch flew under the radar. I'm going to say about him, just as an aside, I used to get a charge going on YouTube and watching him go back and forth with Al Franken and a couple of other nitwits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, okay? And I was like, oh, this guy's great. He would not even allow himself to be goaded a little bit by Al Franken, who tried to get him to make a political statement, and he said, Senator, that you're asking me for a political opinion, and that's, you disagree with them and they disagree with you. To take one side or the other is political, and that's not what I do. I'm like, this guy's great. I want him on the Supreme Court. You know what he just did? As Alito said, he just legislated from the bench. He committed a political act by doing this. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Connie says, girls, by the way, girl, you just mentioned the Connecticut case. Tell the folks about that.
Well, basically, also I want to tell everyone what Robert George had to say. Robert George is a legal scholar. He is a professor at Princeton. And Connie in the chat room basically just said girls' sports are done. Well, Robert George, you're in good company because Professor Robert George, Harvard-educated lawyer, agrees with you. This is what he had to say. He referred to the ruling as legislation predicting to have far-reaching consequences, including the eventual destruction of all women's sports.
Right.
George continues, the Bostock ruling politicized the judiciary and undermines the very thing courts exist to uphold, the rule of law. It will destroy what faith remains in the moral and intellectual integrity of our courts.
Tell us about it.
This is a Princeton professor. This is a Harvard-educated lawyer. This isn't me ranting. This is a Harvard-educated lawyer who teaches at Princeton University.
And I think he has an endowed chair, so he's pretty much
the Woodrow
up there.
Wilson chair.
Yeah. So now, Connie, just to elaborate a little bit, you mentioned girls' sports. There's a case where we covered it on the front line with Joe and Joe. There's 3 girls in Connecticut, high school age. They run track. They break their butts to be the best they could be. And 2 boys decided they want to act like girls, and they run in the girls' track meets, and they win every time. You're hurting these girls' educational opportunities, scholastic opportunities, and using their sports to maybe help them get scholarships, okay? And more importantly, you're taking away their awards. You're competing unfairly against them, okay? Because those are not girls. Those are boys running in a girls' track meet. The Alliance Defending Freedom is taking this case, and they're fighting this case. Now, we held out hope that a conservative Supreme Court's going to say, look, this social engineering, this cultural Marxism, those are 2 boys. They cannot run in a girls' track meet. Okay?
20 years ago, 10 years ago, that's exactly what would have happened.
Right, but now we have to call into question what Gorsuch is going to do in that case because of this case, because of Bostock versus Clayton County. Because now there's precedent, you see. And when you get institutional men like John Roberts, then what is he going to do? He's going to hold up precedent. That's why we have to wonder what's going to happen with abortion. The Tennessee law is going to be challenged, and other abortion laws. What is he going to do then? He's going to say, well, the precedent's Roe versus Wade.
He probably won't even take it.
Well, but see, here's the thing, though. But if they don't take the case and the lower court rules in favor of the state of Tennessee, okay, then the abortion law stands. You're effectively overturning Roe versus Wade. So they may be forced to take the case. if you know what I mean. Now, if the lower court rules against the state of Tennessee, then you're right. Roberts is just going to be a coward and say, we don't want to touch it. So we're not going to allow your appeal to the Supreme Court. It's so nefarious what's going on. That's why Joe and I are spending one entire show on this, because there's a lot to dissect. And none of it's pleasant, by the way.
Let's talk about what Father Gerald Murray had to say. He's a canon lawyer, and he is also a priest in the Diocese of New York City. He's a very, very intelligent guy. This is what he had to say. We have entered the nightmare world in which each person can not only define for himself the meaning of life, but also deny the reality of his own body. Now counting on the federal government to force the rest of us to buy into that delusion or face the coercive power of the state. Mm-hmm. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and the mystery of human life. Murray continued, this is what happens when metaphysical realism is abandoned and the will to power takes over as the guiding principle of judicial analysis.
And remember, when the line you read about at the heart of liberty and blah blah blah, that was Justice Anthony Kennedy. So Father Murray is obviously is quoting that and being critical of that. So it's hold on one second.
Hold on one sec. We're having some Facebook issues. The Zuckerberg crew could be at it again.
Getting really tired of Facebook because we're talking about something sensitive. Something tells me that we're being watched by the Gestapo. I don't know. I'm seeing right now.
Are we frozen?
Yeah, we're frozen right now.
Do you want to cut it?
Yeah, end the live video and then go right back in and I'll edit it. So thanks for staying with us, everybody. So we're sorry about the interruption. Joe and I are starting to get really, really annoyed with Facebook. Okay, and it seems I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It seems like all of a sudden it's a little coincidental because we're talking about we're not even judging, let's say, the heart of the decision.
We're talking about it from
we're talking about it from a legal perspective. We have to talk about the case itself and the dangerous slope that we're on. But this is what we're dealing with. Okay. And that's why we need our politicians and the right-wingers and the free marketeers be damned. We need government intervention into Silicon Valley. We need to break up these companies because we should be able to speak freely on an open platform like Facebook, which came public and was created as an open platform. And it doesn't matter what Mark Zuckerberg thinks of what we're saying. It matters what you think of what we're saying. Okay? And if what we're saying is right, we'll gain an audience. But they can't stand that. The left can't stand that. You were talking about Father Murray, Joe, before Mark Zuckerberg rudely cut us off.
No, we're just giving the perspective of Father Murray and how basically this legislation is going to affect religious groups. I mean, at the end of the day, the court left a lot of open questions with its ruling. For instance, how do you balance this with religious freedom? Again, it's the First Amendment. How do you balance this with freedom of speech? Say I don't want to call somebody a boy who's a girl. because it goes against my conscience. I can't. I could potentially be punished at work. I could potentially be taken to court.
Right.
Based upon this precedence.
Right.
So that goes against my freedom of speech. It goes against my conscience. I don't view you. I'm sorry. I don't view you. If a man dresses up as a woman, I don't view you as a woman. I'm sorry. Call me crazy. I don't. And you can call. And you know something? Orthodox Jews would agree with me. Muslims would agree with me. It's the secular humanists in our society that don't. All religious people would agree with me. It's not just Catholics, Protestants, evangelicals, Baptists, Lutherans, Jews, Muslims. They're not on board with this.
And they voted. Many of these people. This is what bothers us more than anything. Many people voted. I'm still voting for Donald Trump because he still has 300 other judges that he's nominated and has gotten sat on the federal judiciary. Okay, 2 on the Supreme Court. But here's the thing. Let's talk about this. There's been a couple of developments since we talked about it the other day. Even Kavanaugh wrote a dissent, okay, basically saying, I don't make the law, okay? But then he applauded the plaintiffs for their grit and congratulated them on their fighting spirit. Why are you apologizing for your position, Brett?
Because he's afraid.
Because he's so fearful. They're all so fearful. In other words, what are you going to do? You're on the Supreme Court because you're not supposed to react to the political whims. That's why you're there for life, okay? And I'll tell you who had a great observation was Rod Dreher. Now, Rod Dreher we don't always agree with, okay? Rod Dreher is over the American conservative. But unfortunately, he said it correctly. He said, quote, the last reason why religious conservatives should grit their teeth and vote for Trump has been blasted to smithereens by this decision written by a Trump justice. And not just a Trump justice, but a paradigmatic Trump justice. The man whose place on the Supreme Court was meant to justify religious conservatives turning a blind eye to Trump's many other failures. This is what "but Gorsuch" means. These words are like ashes in my mouth today. That's Rod Dreher. Now, again, Joe and I are still going to vote for Trump. I'm going to vote for him, and I'm going to hope for the best, because I don't know that he can control the judges. Gorsuch, like I said, presented himself at his Senate Judiciary hearing. He presented himself as somebody who was going to interpret the law and not make the law. So, in fact, if he betrayed us, he betrayed Trump. But like I said, Trump is up to 300 judges now. You know that?
Correct.
All right? I'm still going to vote for him for that. So, because at least we'll have hope, okay, in the federal judiciary. And who knows, maybe Trump can make up for it by 2 more Supreme Court justices over the next 4 years. But it's not a good, Rod Dreher kind of is saying, well, now you still want to go vote for Trump? The answer to that is yes, but his assessment is right.
You see, I have my own opinion with regard to the religious liberties piece of it. I think they left room for it on purpose, and eventually it will be brought to the court again. In the meantime, though, this is the trouble. Most litigants don't have the type of money to fight something in court ad infinitum. You know, it costs a ton of money to fight something for years in a court. Like, for instance, that cake situation in Colorado. That could cost millions upon millions of dollars. So you're putting the common man at basically a loss. Eventually, though, it will get back to the court. Actually, Gorsuch even alluded to that. What he said was, in this particular case, he almost tried to excuse the fact that he was making his decision. He basically said, in this particular case, it doesn't involve a religious entity, so therefore I am ruling as I am ruling. Now, will it get back to the court? Probably. Will that happen tomorrow? No. In the meantime, it's going to cost tons and tons and tons of time, tons and tons and tons of money. And again, the small guy doesn't have the money to fight this in court. And that's the crime that this, and frankly, again, it goes against the very thing they always claim, science. There are 2 genders, my friend, men and women. I can't even believe I have to say that.
Nowadays you do.
But there are 2 genders. And the court, again, I'm not talking about treating people unfairly with regard to, if you can do a job, I'd hire you, I'll treat you with respect. I'll be your friend, but I'm not going to agree with your choice to mutilate your body. We're going to cover a story on the Crusade channel. Walt Heyer, who we've covered in the past, he transitioned from a man to a woman and then transitioned back. And he talks about all the harm it's done to his body. Do you know that YouTube censored a video that he just put out talking about all the bad side effects of that transition?
Why are they censoring that? This is a guy who went through it. This is not Joe and Joe.
It's not me.
All right, it's not us two. This is Walt Heyer.
Look him up.
Who claims he was lied to by the psychologist. And we covered this a few months ago when we covered it. He's a brave, brave man. Just to give you an example of what this guy went through. When he went to talk to a doctor, okay, initially, and he explained to the doctor that he believes he's a woman, okay, and he wanted to transition. But he was trying to figure out why he felt the way. He made the point of saying that his grandmother, when he was 4 years old, used to dress him in girls' clothes. And the psychiatrist said, oh, that's got nothing to do with it. What? A 4-year-old gets dressed in girls' clothing by their grandmother, and you're going to say later on when they think they're a girl that that's got nothing to do with it? I mean, seriously, Joe, do they think we're all effing stupid?
Well, that is a shame. And he will, if you look him up, Walt Heyer, look him up, he'll get into it. But again, why would YouTube take that down? They said he's contributing to hate speech.
Right.
He's just telling his story. He's lived it firsthand, yet they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And too many people choose to gloss over stuff like that. They choose to gloss over that. You're going to have, and you're having it right now, adults looking young children in the face in grammar school, convincing them to transition to the opposite sex in America today. If you would have done that 20 years ago in a grammar school, you would have been arrested.
Right. Now, if you don't do it, you're arrested.
Did we somehow become enlightened? This is, and
You
people
just-
are buying into it. And frankly, I don't actually think people are buying into it. They're afraid to speak about it. You see, I actually think, this is what I actually think, is a lot of people, when they shut their front door, what they say to their wife is, thank God that's not my kid. I could care less about that kid. That's what they're saying.
Right.
I don't agree with that. But yet, this is what's going on. These are the times, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And they won't speak out about it.
Right.
I'll even bet that there's a lot of principals who actually would agree with me if they were at my kitchen table, but they do that to keep their job
Right.
and to keep their nice, comfortable salary and pension, which is an utter and absolute disgrace because you're scarring a kid.
Right.
And our taxes pay for that nonsense. Do you know that during this George Floyd riot situation that New Jersey passed in the dark of night a very aggressive LGBT sex education bill that goes into effect immediately in the state of New Jersey in every public school
In the public school
K through
curriculum.
12.
Right.
Look it up. They did it when the press was all
Preoccupied.
You don't think that the governor did that on purpose so people wouldn't pay attention?
Because
Look
even
it up.
because even in New Jersey, remember about 6 months ago?
They protested in Trenton, and
Parents.
this is a very liberal state.
Right, but those parents went down there to say absolutely not. Absolutely not. In other words, what you do when you go, there's a lot of people who have maybe more of a laissez-faire attitude than we do. I don't want anybody to go to hell, okay? And I don't want anybody to live a life that's going to be destructive. I don't want anybody to go through what Walt Heyer went through, because Joe and I love people. We don't hate people, okay? So we speak out about it. But these, mostly women, mothers, went down to Trenton, and they said, absolutely not. We don't want this, okay? And we don't want our children being taught this. And like I said, later on in life, if an adult is going to do this, okay, I mean,
That's your
business. But
business.
you're not going to promote it in the public school
And encourage young
kids.
Get lost.
Absolutely not. And these politicians, I'm telling you, the Republican Party, there's got to be there's got to come a point, Joe, where there's going to be a realignment in this country. I don't know when it's coming. I don't. But I firmly believe that there will be a realignment in this country, and it's gonna set new parameters as far as political parties are concerned. But this is what I mean. When Obergefell was passed, and they asked John Kasich about it when he was running for president against Trump, okay, in the primary, he said, well, it's the law of the land, so let's move on. Bishop Barron said the same thing to Dave Rubin. It's the law of the land. Let's move on. So what do you think from a guy who I've had respect for, Senator Chuck Grassley, and what did he say? It's the law of the land. That's what he said. It's the law of the land, and it probably makes uniform what a lot of states have already done and probably negates Congress's necessity for acting. That's your job, Senator Grassley. That's your job. Okay? What the hell are you talking about?
Once again, this is just another nail in the coffin of our youth. It's another nail in the coffin of our society.
Yep.
That's all that this is. It's just we are so deceived. Our culture is our intellect is so darkened.
Right.
It's so sad to see. You're going to lie and manipulate a young child into thinking this and encourage as opposed to counseling them.
Well, they're banning therapy.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I would rather my kid be illiterate than have to go through something like that and work a manual labor job for the rest of his life than to go through that type of nonsense.
Right.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Are you crazy?
But that's what the Marxists are promoting.
But
That's
this
what
is
they're
what
promoting.
people, dude, we vote for these people.
I know.
You know, this is my point. You see, you are part of it when you vote. You see, too many people, they just vote. They just I'm not for that. Like many things that we talk about from a Democratic perspective, I'm not for that. I'm not for that. But you vote for it.
Right.
You vote for that. You see, once again, if you're an adult and you want to do that, I still think it's a bad idea. But you're an adult. Listen, I'm not, I can't make you do something. If you wanted to talk about it, I would try to talk you out of it. To mutilate your body, listen to Walt Heyer. Look him up. He did it. He'll tell you about it. But to do that to a kid? Are you crazy?
Right.
I'm sorry.
And that's straight up child abuse.
In my view, it is.
Actually, well, no. According to Dr. Paul McHugh at Johns Hopkins, he said it's child abuse.
And he said 70 to 80% of children that have these feelings change their ideas as life moves forward. 70 to 80%. You do realize when you take chemicals into your body, you do realize when you cut parts of your body off, it's a done deal. It's a done deal.
Right.
So you're going to encourage a 16-year-old to do this? Are you out of your mind?
And that's why, and Walt Heyer made a very good point. Again, he's a doctor. We're always supposed to listen to the scientists. Listen to the scientists. Listen to the scientists. You got to make sure you listen to the scientists. Well, Dr. Paul McHugh is a scientist. And he said flat out in his study, men cannot become women. Women cannot become men.
And that was one of the things that Walt Heyer talked about. First of all, let's talk about this. People who transition, the suicide rate is off the charts. Their life expectancy, I don't even think is in the 40s. Look that up. But what Walt Heyer talked about was what he thought was going to make him feel better, didn't. You see, that was one of the driving factors, and that's what drives many of these people to suicide. They're looking for an answer to a quote-unquote problem, and they think this transition is going to basically solve that problem. And what Walt Heyer, if you look at again, look it up. Don't take my word for it. What he said is, it did not. I was not satisfied in the transition. It did not meet my expectation. Why? Because you cannot change your sex. If you're a man, you're a man. And if you're a woman, you're a woman. I even can't believe I have to say that.
Nowadays you do.
Again, don't take my word for it. Look at Johns Hopkins research. Look at a gentleman that did it.
And then weigh it for yourself.
And then let's have a conversation.
Right.
Stop just parroting what the culture says. Too many people just go along. They don't think past their hand. And frankly, when you present an educated argument, like coming from Johns Hopkins University, coming from a man who did this, and then tried to transition back, he said his life was wrecked. YouTube says it's hate speech.
It's hate speech.
That's
Walt
not hate
Heyer.
speech.
That's not, and another thing too. That's not discriminating against somebody who's part of the LGBT, or at least was. That's not discrimination, anti-LGBT discrimination. He would say, I was one of those people. I was a trans. Okay, but you're discriminating against me when I try to offer my experience. Again, it's his experience
That's where
that he's relaying.
It's demonic.
Oh yeah,
It's demonic. Because again, if you're so confident in your position, listen to Walt Heyer. If you're so confident in your position, listen to Dr. McHugh at Johns Hopkins. Let's have a debate. Let's have a discussion. Let's see if your arguments hold up.
Right.
They won't.
They won't. Let's get back to this case. So Ted Cruz, all right, I don't always agree with him, but I like Ted Cruz, okay? And if he was my side, I mean, I have some problems because he's not Catholic, but he should be, okay? But Ted Cruz was making some sense. He said, quote, "This judicial rewriting of our laws short-circuited the legislative process and the authority," catch this, the authority of who? The electorate. 6 unelected and unaccountable judges instead took it upon themselves to act as legislators, and that undermines our democratic process.
Another Harvard-educated lawyer, by the way, Ted Cruz.
Right. And and statements like that used to be directed at liberal justices. But now it's being directed at the so-called conservative justices, namely Roberts and Gorsuch. And quite frankly, even though Kavanaugh dissented, again, Kavanaugh apologized basically for his position. That doesn't seem to me, that doesn't give me a high level of confidence when the Tennessee case, if that gets to the Supreme Court, if they're going to actually act to uphold pro-life legislation, because all these people call themselves pro-life. Are they going to cave on that too? Are they going to cave to the feminists too? It's horrible.
It's not even about feminism. We've talked about that. Abortion is about sex.
Well, we know that.
It's about recreational sex, and abortion is your way out.
Pretty much.
What it is. And the culture is, I've said this to Joe, I don't think we have the political will to overturn it. But God will. You watch. God will. We saw recently with a few things, the pandemic, we saw how we have no control. Do you think God is happy with these decisions? Let's take a step back for a second. Do you actually think that? Everyone wants to go to heaven, right? Everyone does. Every time you see someone who dies on social media, you always see, oh, they're in heaven. Everybody's in heaven, heaven, heaven. Everyone wants to go to heaven. You think God is in favor of this?
Not any kind of real God.
But God is simply, if you do, I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, because it's not just the Catholic version of God. There is one God, but the Jews aren't for this. Neither are the Muslims.
Right.
This is a pervasive idea, what we're talking about, by the way. It's pervasive all over the world. Forget about the elites. Forget about the relativistic secular humanists that are basically in the press and the people who are drinking $8 cups of coffee in cities across America, in LA, Chicago, and New York.
Not in Seattle anymore. It's been locked down. Seattle's a war zone.
Forget it. Seattle's not even a city. It's gone into the Thunderdome. I'm waiting for Tina Turner to come out. But forget about that. What we're talking about is a pervasive idea across the world for centuries. Just because of now that people are embracing this idea doesn't make it right. Keep in mind, everything the Nazis did was legal.
Didn't make it
right.
What we
did in this country to African Americans was legal. That doesn't mean it was right. So what's going on is going against the natural law. It's going against science. It's going against logic. Just because it's the vogue thing to do. History will look back at this society and shake its head. Our society is collapsing. It is collapsing in front of our eyes. And yet, people but I'm not for that. So why do you vote for it?
Why do you vote for it? Why do you vote for it?
I can't tell you how many times I have conversations with people, and we'll have like a heart-to-heart. Someone who's like my friend, but just sees things a little different politically. And I'll say, are you for that? No, I'm not for that. That's crazy. Well, that's what you're voting for.
Right. I would say in New Jersey, I would ask him, did you vote for Murphy? Because he passed it, as Joe said, in the middle of the night when COVID was going on and the riots are going on. Because you can't, even in New Jersey, You can't pass legislation like that in the light of day. Talk about John Paul II, because what you're talking about, what Joe's talking about, is what Hadley Arks, who wrote a great article, okay, great column, The Ebbing of Truth. Hit it, Joe.
Well, John Paul, just so you know, I mean, not only was he a religious figure, John Paul II, from a 20th century perspective, purely from a historical perspective, was probably one of the greatest figures of the 20th century. Mikhail Gorbachev said that it was him and him alone that was the spark that caused the wall to fall in Germany and for communism to fall. That was Gorbachev in Russia. That's what he said. There's a great documentary. It's called The 9 Days That Changed the World. It talks about his visit, first papal visit to Poland. I highly recommend you see it. He spent 9 days there, and it was that visit that sparked the Solidarity movement. It was that movement that changed the government of Poland, and it was that change that caused the Berlin Wall to fall, which ultimately caused the Soviet Union to collapse.
Right.
Now, this is what, and I bring that up because John Paul had seen a lot. He lived under communism. He also was a very intelligent man. He was an intellectual in his time. He became a priest, and he eventually became the Pope. And this, so he had a lot to say.
Let me give a quick shout out. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, Facebook Live. Sorry about the earlier problem. We have one 17-minute clip that got cut off by Mark Zuckerberg, and now we're on the second one. Both of them will be on the page, but we'll have our producer put them both together, so it'll be one seamless conversation. Just giving a shout out. Connie's joining us. Dan's joining us. Dan says, just like looking back at Rome, but we can help our family and friends. If the country's going to fall apart, Dan, if, as Rod Dreher says, as Catholics in particular, we have to go off the grid and do the Benedict option, okay, as he describes, well, you're damn right. That's all we're going to have is our family and our friends, and we have to take care of each other, because ultimately this world and this country in particular, be damned if they're going to go down this road. Got people like us are going to be in real trouble. So as you pointed out, Rome fell, it transitioned, okay, it didn't last forever, and America, if it goes down this path, is going to fall, and fall rapidly. I think it would be a fair statement to make. We got to take care of each other, all of us, our friends and our family. That's the way it's got to be. So you are spot on, my friend.
But this is what John Paul had to say. He said he warned against the tendency to reduce conscience to the level of feelings passionately held. Conscience, rightly understood, took its guide from a body of objective moral truths. Detached from that understanding, he warned, the inescapable claims of truth disappear, yielding their place to a criterion of sincerity, authenticity, and being at peace with oneself. So much so that some have come to adopt a radically subjective concept of moral judgment. What is that? That is a dictatorship of relativism. Mm-hmm. That is what that is. That's what we're seeing.
Right.
That is what we're seeing. There is no more objective moral truth in our society. You determine what you want to determine. Society does not sustain itself that way. I'm telling you this. Our society is collapsing. And then people say, again, many people say, oh, as if they may even agree with you. Don't you think that's going to affect you? You see, societies, when they collapse, look at history. It's not pretty.
No.
It's not a pretty state. Look at history. Look what happened in France. Look what happened in Spain. Look what happened in Mexico. Look what happened in the Soviet Union. It's not a pretty state.
Nope.
And this is what's happening.
And we're supposed to be better than that as Americans. And we had is the key word there, a constitution that, protected our rights, and men and women who would hold to that constitution in protecting our rights. Well, that's just gone out the window. And again, this article is the ebbing of truth, because that's what Joe just described. Moral, let's just break it down just real quick. I've said this to a million people. It's simple, but it's true. It's not simplistic, but it's simple. When somebody says there is no there is no absolute truth, very simply ask them, are you saying that absolutely? Or is that statement absolutely true? There is no logic behind the statement. Logic fails on that statement because that statement implodes on itself. Because they're making an absolute statement while they're saying that there is no absolutes. You get it? But why don't people understand that? And say, it's your truth and my truth. No, is that true? Then is that true also? Is that true absolutely? That there's just your truth and my truth? Relativism doesn't work.
And I've said
logically, philosophically, and as Joe's pointing out, in terms of society, it doesn't work out practically.
And also, society does not sustain itself on a relativistic basis.
Yeah.
All civilizations that went in that direction fail. Every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, this is the direction we're going.
That's right. And it's all based on...
I don't know what to tell you.
It's all based on lies. And Eddie Mejias is joining us. And so everybody knows, July 4th weekend, we're going to be doing an interview with Eddie. He's running for Congress in Florida. We're supporting him. He wants to talk about some of the issues that he's getting behind. Not just general issues. He's got some things that he wants to promote if he gets elected to the Congress. So Eddie, thanks for joining us, brother. We got your back. I wanted to... is it okay if I point something out real quick? So... have the arcs, again, this is a great column. I recommend anybody go read it, okay? So basically what he was talking about, the people who insist that their sexual definition as males and females depends most decisively on their own feelings. It's very important, all right? When you talk about relativism, that usually rests on, I just feel that way. That's my truth, which is a lot of BS. About themselves, have nevertheless turned with raging contempt against those who would not accept the truth of their claim. I thought I don't have to. They just said it's all relative, right? So then that means I don't have to accept their truth. I have my truth, you have your truth, and everybody sings Kumbaya. Is that the way it works? Is that the way it works? Because it doesn't work that way. But I want to point out one thing, and then we'll talk about this, okay? Because this is everything Joe's bringing up with relativism and what John Paul II talked about. The hard news then to some people is that the males who become females will still not be a part of those people, quote, people who menstruate. Arx refers to Juliana Pilon's The Utopian Conceit. Now follow this, okay? That totalitarian regimes rested upon lies, and every day they needed to enjoin their populace to affirm those lies anew. Is that not what we're going through right now? Are we not getting lie after lie after lie piled on us every single day to the point where we can't open our mouth or we'll lose our job? Isn't that the truth?
Well, that's why Kavanaugh, in his particular statement that he wrote, had to basically couch it down.
He had to apologize.
He had to apologize for something. It's like the emperor's new clothes. Everyone's looking at the guy. He's butt naked. And they're like, ooh, that's a beautiful suit you have on. Because they're just afraid.
And the little kid comes in and says, the emperor's got no clothes. And and that's the way it is. And by the way, I did write in my notes, when it comes to what Juliana Pilon was saying, is that, can anyone say mainstream media? How are the lies piled on us? Well, number one, through the mainstream media. Number two, Zuckerberg and Dorsey over at Twitter and the broad who runs YouTube, they shut you down. So they take... People need to get this through their head. The Supreme Court just took this decision out of your hands. Therefore, you have nowhere to go. You're going to have to wait a generation for this to change, if it ever does. Okay, because of Neil Gorsuch. They took away your power. Now what they're doing, real quick, Joe. Now what they're doing with the media is this. The mainstream media shall be the only thing you listen to, and we're going to put the clamp down on social media because we don't want any counter narratives. None whatsoever. They're giving people no outlet. That is a cause for serious unrest. That is because when people say, I should say, rightfully, and you should say, I have the right to free speech. Do you really? This is an open platform. That's what Facebook was supposed to be when they came public. Same with Google, same with Twitter, same with YouTube. It's supposed to be an open platform. They're not supposed to be editorializing. All right, and Trump and Josh Hawley and others are trying to fight against them. They're not supposed to be editorializing.
Facebook is trying to take down Trump's campaign ads, saying a symbol that he's using, it's a upside-down triangle that Antifa uses. They tried to twist it. We're going to talk about this on the Crusade channel. They tried to twist it and say it was an anti-Semitic symbol. And Trump pushed back and basically said, no, it's a symbol of Antifa, and people are using it all over Facebook, and you're not taking it down there.
Right.
And you're basically trying to take down my ad, claiming it's anti-Semitic, when it has nothing to do with that.
Right.
It has everything to do with the symbol that Antifa uses.
Right.
This is the games and the nonsense that's going on. People, they're trying to take your voice away. And Joy Pullman of The Federalist says it well. She says, when courts legislate, they disenfranchise the people. They invalidate our votes, our God-given natural right to rule ourselves, by adding words to statute that Congress did not put there and has repeatedly and explicably refused to add. These judges are destroying our Constitution, our way of life, the people's sovereignty, and thus our human dignity.
Joy Pullman hits it right on the
Bam.
head. That's exactly what it is. And we thought, I mean, there's always hope because there's always Christ. And so there's hope, okay? Bottom line is, though, right now, in the political world, you have roadblocks that are putting, in the cultural and in politics, they're putting one roadblock after another. And Gorsuch should be ashamed of himself for deciding that he lied. He lied. The mainstream media is not going to point that out. You want to know why? He gave them what they wanted. That's what he did. He legislated from the bench. He was no better than Sotomayor, no better than Kagan, no better than Breyer, and no better than Ginsburg, and no better than the chief buffoon, John Roberts. No better than any of them. He gave them what they wanted. The mainstream media is not going to say anything about it. Woo, Gorsuch. Oh, thank God he's on the court. Thank God it was him and not Amy Coney Barrett. Because if that's the way he's going to be for the rest of his life, we were looking forward to him being young. He's going to be there a while. Now we dread the fact that he's going to be there a while. And he should repent of his decision. And I'm talking about politically more than anything. He needs to go back to what he said he was going to do, which is to interpret the Constitution and apply the Constitution as written. And the next time any case like this comes along, he's going to have to act that way. Or else he's just another activist judge, the same way Roberts and the rest of them are. It is such the betrayal. Such a betrayal. Joe and I can't stomach it. We covered it an hour on the Crusade channel the other day, covering it for about an hour tonight. And I'll tell you, we could go on for days with this conversation.
But it comes down to this. I mean, we have to be courageous. We have to sometimes be willing to say a hard truth, and frankly, it's not going to make you popular. You see, I've said this time and time and time again on show after show after show. When you say the truth, you're going to have enemies. It's part of life. You can't be like basically on everyone's side. You get nothing done in life. You have to make a decision. You have to take a side. That doesn't mean you have to hate the person on the other side. I don't hate anyone.
No.
I hate ideas, and this is a bad one. And it's bad for our country. It's basically a mob rule. The mob influenced the court because they didn't have a backbone. They influenced the court. Once again, our intellect has become darkened. I have my own thoughts about that. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see the face of God. You don't have to be a scholar or an academic to see things clearly, but you do have to purify your heart. Our hearts have become dark. We don't see properly. We call things what they're not. Our yes is not yes, and our no is not no. And our society is suffering, and we're seeing the bad fruit of it in issue after issue, in day after day. And yet we keep voting for it. Oh, I'm not for that, so why do you vote for it?
Right, particularly on the state
Why
level.
do you vote for it?
Where you have more effect on the state level.
These are elected officials. You allow them to manipulate you. You allow them to take away your voice because you're afraid. You're afraid that people are going to say something about you. You're afraid that you're going to be excluded. Well, I thought we kind of left that when we left the playground after grammar school when we're an adult. Adults shouldn't worry about that. Mm-hmm. And then we have children. Today's Father's Day. What kind of example do we give our kids? We tell our kids to behave a certain way. We try to guide them. Well, guiding them is basically to take a stand in life, to showing them that it's not the way to follow the masses off the cliff, but it's the narrow road that leads to life. That's a father's job. That's a man's job. That's a mother's job. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. And there are going to be consequences. We're seeing consequences, and there'll be more consequences. And they're going to affect you.
Right.
Don't think you're insulated from it, because you're not. You're not. It's time to be courageous. It's time to make a stand. It's time to maybe make a few enemies. Sadly. That doesn't mean you have to hate them, but maybe they're going to hate you.
Jesus said the servant is no better than his master. If they hate you, they hated me first.
And he also said if they persecuted me, they'll persecute you.
Well, get ready for it, because you're not going to be able to fight against this.
And no decision is a decision. You can't sit on the fence. There is no sitting on the fence.
There's no fence in this
war. You
war.
made the decision by not saying something. And again, I don't hate anybody, but I don't agree with ideas, and I will speak out about it. Why? Because I thought I lived in America. I thought I had freedom of speech. I thought my voice matters. I thought I could point to intellectual conversations that are going on in the culture that make sense and present them to people and have a dialogue. I guess that's not the case. I guess this is not the America I thought it was. Does my tax dollars count? I guess they do, because I'm about to pay my taxes in another couple weeks. They take my money, they cash my check, but they're not interested in my view. And if I say my view, I can get squashed by the powers that be.
To lose your job.
And or get squashed by the government.
Right.
Is this the American dream?
This is America?
This is what's going on.
I don't wake up every day, and Joe doesn't wake up every day finding out ways that I'm going to take away other people's rights, but get it through your head. With all these leftist groups, I don't care who they are, okay, and what particular identity they have. They're all leftists. Every one of them. They do wake up every day concocting ways to take away your rights. And now the Supreme Court just gave them the ability in one area to do that. Thank you, Neil Gorsuch. And I think it was Dan said, tyranny via SCOTUS. Sounds right, Dan. Because that's exactly what it is. Remember something. We say it all the time in the show, but it bears repeating because it's an important fact. Ireland voted for abortion. Ireland voted for gay marriage. The United States never voted for either one of those things.
And they will never put it on the ballot.
Never.
Because it won't win.
It won't win. So what do? We'll get the judges to do it. And remember, liberal California voted against gay marriage. But a judge said, we don't care
so
what you have to say.
Is I know better than you. This is the Barack Obama way to lead. I'll hold your hand, little boy. Joe the plumber. You just don't know enough. I have to help you.
Right.
I am an enlightened one, and I must help you.
Because you're stupid. That's his attitude.
That's what's going on. I have to help you and guide you through life. Giving up centuries of wisdom, centuries of guidance that civilizations have founded themselves upon. Throw it all in the garbage. Let's listen to the secular humanists as they drive our country right into the sewer.
You're right. That's exactly what's happening, and we have to hold the line as best we could. Like I said, we're still going to vote for Trump. There's still an entire federal judiciary out there. We're going to vote and try to take the gavel away from Nancy Pelosi. All right? Trump is still on our side, even though a couple of his judges kind of stuck the knife in our back. He, I believe, and Joe believes, he still has our back. He can't control if a Neil Gorsuch lies in his Senate confirmation hearing. And Neil Gorsuch lied in his Senate confirmation hearing. We know exactly what his true color is now. He's very comfortable legislating from the bench. We still have, I believe, and Joe believes, we still have to vote for Trump. There's still going to be a couple hundred more judges that are going to go on the bench. They're not all going to be winners, but we have to do that anyway. Vote for the Senate and vote for the House and try to defeat these people on a local level as best we can. Okay? John Romano said, keep killing it. John, pray for us that we do. And thank you for the compliment. Joe and I are going to keep killing it. We're going to show up Sunday nights, 8 o'clock, Facebook Live. All right, today was one topic because I think it was a very important conversation to have. Next week, we'll be back with a slate of things to talk about. Please follow us on Facebook, like us, share us, do all that fun stuff. Please, we're trying to build up subscribers on YouTube. So the Frontline with Joe and Joe on YouTube, subscribe to us there. Just hit the little button and hit the little bell, and it'll let you know about all our new content, whether they're interviews or our show here. Take a shot on the Crusade channel. Okay, think about it. Go on, get a 30-day free subscription. Just listen to Mike Church for a little bit. Okay. And you'll agree that that is a station you want to subscribe to. Again, doesn't cost you anything to subscribe for 30 days free, and then there's a cost at the end if you decide to stay on, from which Joe and I get nothing. We're happy to have the platform. It's been very good for us because of all you good people out there who've donated to the GoFundMe campaign. And Dan and a couple of others donated to the GoFundMe campaign. It's support the Frontline with Joe and Joe on GoFundMe. The link is also on our Facebook page, so you could find it there. Paul said, this is not the only place. I don't believe our members of Congress represent their constituencies any longer. Even my Republican conservative ex-sheriff Congressman John Rutherford. Well, Paul, look, obviously we're not looking to Republicans. Okay, we don't consider Trump to be a typical Republican. Okay, but nonetheless, we're because that party has sold us out. But but no matter what, Paul, we still have to keep fighting the fight. So please do all those suggestions that I just said. Remember that we thank you very much, and we're very grateful for your support. And keep in mind that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.